First thing we'll take up is the last one that we got, which is the town hall purchase of services account for $4,000, and that's to convert the mailroom downstairs to an IT office.
Correct.
Oh,
But where's the mail going?
Yeah,
That's the most
where is
important
that?
thing.
What's that?
where is that? I'm sorry, I
it's
thought it was this
downstairs.
one.
No,
Ah.
that's it's downstairs. When you first come in the back door, you take a left
At the
down
top
a
of the
little hall.
stairs.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I
a
didn't know
little
there was a
room.
room there. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
teeny.
It's
It's
a
a-
rectangular room, 11 feet by 8 feet.
So the plan is that there are cabinets built in right now, upper and lower cabinets. Those will be removed. Beadboard will be put up in where the wall where the cabinets are, so that it's similar to this on all the walls. We will have there's a sink in that room, so the plumbing will need to be capped. And then it is a linoleum floor that have the squares, and they're coming up in certain areas. So the thought process is just to get carpet squares and put those down, so it's more of a office-type environment. So it is a small room, it's not perfect, but unfortunately, we don't have space to expand into real offices. So it's the best we can do. We will move the mail upstairs, which is where it was prior to the town hall being renovated anyway, so it's not a big deal. People will adjust. And so we are in the process of still getting quotes for this job, but $4,000 is the most that we feel that we will need to get the job done. We're hoping it comes in a lot lower than that. But Ashley, we have 2 quotes so far, and we're waiting for at least one more. So that's where we are.
Question.
Yeah.
Excuse me, the 2 service panels, electrical service
Yes.
panels for this building are in that room, so that room's gonna have to be left unlocked? Is that gonna be possible?
So in the Knox box, they have the key to the different rooms, and like my office even has electrical panels in it. And we had the building inspector come and just do a preliminary walkthrough of the room. So as long as we have our master key in the Knox box, they're still able to get to it.
Okay, so the Knox box will have a key to the outside door, and that also opens all the inside doors?
So they have a master key
Oh,
that
that works.
opens any
Okay.
door in the building, and as a part of our commitment to them, we are not gonna put any furniture or anything within the 36 inches that's required in front of it. So we've kind of done a rough outline of that the desk would face away from the door, and we would still give the clearance to the electrical panel that's needed.
Okay. It's just an access issue as far as I was
Mm-hmm.
concerned.
Mike?
I've got a bunch, so I'll just go one at a time. Oh, first of all, who's,
Oh, this is,
I'm sorry, you weren't here last meeting.
Ashley Griffin, she's our facilities coordinator. You probably weren't at the meeting, the first meeting we came to
Right,
when
yeah.
she was here. Okay, sorry.
so we have hired an individual for this position. Have they started?
He will be starting on Thursday.
And there are no other locations in other buildings across the
No.
way or somewhere else that
We already
can-
have people sharing offices,
Okay.
so no, there is not.
Even at the public safety
Yeah.
complex?
Public safety complex is full. Mhm.
And and why do we need to do this as reserve fund transfer when we have a special town meeting coming up in about a month?
Because he's starting on Thursday, and it would be nice to get it done and have him have office space. The Leon, prior to him leaving, recommended he use the meeting room at the top of the stairs as an office right now, which is not ideal, because that meeting room is used. And then, we're talking, if we wait till town meeting is October 29th, I believe. So by the time we lose a month, a little more than a month at that point in time, and then for the work to be done, it would be, he'd been here for several weeks without an actual home, so.
Could you actually build something out in the basement of the center office building?
So they're already pretty much at a tight capacity there. They do quite a bit of file storage there, and they've gone through like records condensing to try to make the space more accessible, but we already have storage in some areas that we technically should not have storage in. And then we'd have to look at the ventilation, because it's okay for a storage space, but if you were to put someone down there full-time, I don't know if we would meet the air quality and the airflow. We'd have to do some more research before we could give a final answer on that.
And you haven't you said you're still getting quotes. When are they going to be in? And
So the issue with the quotes is we've received a couple versions of quotes, and we've had to give some feedback to the providers because it's been quoted a few different ways. Some people are able to include the electrical, they've wanted to outsource it. So we want the quote to truly reflect what the project is, because despite bringing the person and then showing them the scope, we've now had to kind of take it to the next step of specifically give them feedback on what they gave us, because it wasn't exactly what we asked for. Some things had the correct flooring, some things didn't account for adding the beadboard. It was just a true, like, flat finish wall.
And honestly, I mean, the reason I'm asking tonight is I was trying to make it so that you didn't have to have another meeting next week. And I think $4,000 is a fair number for the work we're looking to do. It's probably high by maybe $1,000, but I'd rather get the job done. And historically, we come back to you for money in the purchase of service account for town hall anyway, usually due to the HVAC. So, the money will either get applied to that for repairs or,
I guess I'm not troubled by the expenditure itself. I'm just trying to figure out the timing. We seem to be getting a lot of reserve fund transfers early in the year right now, and I'm just.
Yep. So
with
Kathy
the
and
town
I-
meeting not too far away, there may be a slight inconvenience for a new employee. I don't know if the process you described to get the quotes aligned the way you want is a 2-day process and you're ready to move on Monday, or if it eats into 2 or 3 weeks of
well, we were
a
hoping to
4
have,
5
we were
week
hoping that
cycle.
we would have an actual number for tonight, but unfortunately that didn't happen. Which is why, Kathy got the reserve fund transfer very late in the day because I was waiting, hoping to have some information. Kathy and I talked about this the other day, the amount of, this is the 4th reserve fund transfer, it's only September. The amounts have been larger than normal. I don't like coming to the reserve fund for money, but that's what it's there for. And, the whole idea of a reserve fund is to keep government moving and not have to wait for a town meeting to happen. So I think, everything that we give you has been justified. There's been a valid reason. And, I don't think it's fair, honestly, to, there is a sufficient money in the reserve fund, and I don't think it's fair to have somebody start. It's bad enough that he's starting and he doesn't have a real office space. But then to just prolong it because there's a town meeting coming up in October, I don't see what purpose that serves. I also told Kathy, when we talked yesterday, that my intention is to have an article on the special town meeting to replenish the reserve fund, because I am concerned with, some of the bigger hits that it's taken at the beginning of the year, and so that's pretty much all I can say on that.
And if I may add one thing to that, is that we made the decision to employ the person because we wanted to bring benefit to the departments and to our community in the way we service them. So if we have him in a temporary space, he is someone who's going to have access to highly confidential information. And not that it necessarily would be printed, but how can he lock, his doors or keep what hardware he may be working on secure if we have him in a temporary space that really is a conference room?
Yeah, we would basically have to move, anything he was physically doing from the conference room during the day, we would have to lock up in another office during the night. There's no doubt about that. And we also, those conference rooms are used. You've been here before when every single room is being used.
Kevin?
What about East Brookfield Road?
What about it?
It's a town building, right?
It is.
Is it still up kept?
So there are repairs that need to be made, and that probably is a conversation for another day, but that is not move-in ready at this point in time. So the selectmen, as the policymakers, would have to make a decision to move some money forward to renovate that, and it's not a massive renovation. What did they say, like about $100,000 worth of repairs possibly?
Depending on the type and use of the building, if it was for some basic office space and storage, around 100,000, or to make it more open for different things, it was a bit more than that.
Well, I know that at one point, the school's offices were in there, so it was office space and it had conference rooms.
Yeah.
So,
And they've had
it was used for that purpose.
It was, but then don't forget, we rented the building for a very long time to a dance studio, so there was things that were done inside of it that would not be conducive at the moment to office space.
And have you also, in your speccing this out, I see a lot of it akin to the video room in a way that the power supplies that it'll need and the network connections and all that, so there might be some special electrical service needed.
So we've looked specifically for the electrical and the power. As far as the network, he needs to get in and work in the room and figure out exactly what he's going to need and where, because with the configuration, he's gonna have a workspace in one corner and then he'll have the desk space in the other. But until he's there and using it, and then for something like that, to do the overall, and Barbara and I talked about this, some of that we may be able to use out of, I believe, the operating budget or some general repairs if it's something at that point that we would need to do. But this is the initial configuration and remodel of the space.
Yeah, I guess the way I look at it, though, it's, power, clean power is very important. So if you have a double outlet in 2 power strips with 16 things plugged into them,
Yeah,
that's
no,
not a good
no,
situation
but
to
there-
having
I
lots
mean,
of
there-
clean
there's already,
power.
I mean, there's power in the room
So
already.
there are 3 4-gang boxes that are directly wired into that with 4 power outlets, and then if you needed to add surge protection or anything to those, just the issue would be the network capability. There is 2 ports in there right now, so he may or may not need more in the future, or what spaces he's going to be working in, and that's the part that as he gets settled in the job and we figure out exactly, like there's a job description, but his duties and as they evolve, some of those changes may need to be made through different line items.
We also, for electrical and then actually running, cabling the building, we've used Tantascwa. So all we have to do is pay for the supplies and then the labor is free. So if they're available, they've been pretty good to us where they're able to fit us in. So that's an option too. But, I mean, we're not going into a room that, has absolutely no electrical outlets or, so it would, even if we had to wait a month or 2 for Tantascwa to come in and do something, he can use a laptop. The laptop doesn't need to be plugged in to be on the network. So there's things that we can do.
I think you're going to find, just based on my experience, he's going to need multiple screens.
Yes.
And possible.
Him and I, so he came in today, and I spoke to him today, and we're going to figure that all out on Thursday as to what he needs. Like I said, it's not going to be a perfect world on day one, and the goal though is within a few weeks to have it, so at least he has an office. And on Thursday when I meet with him for the first time as an employee, I will, he's going to let me know what exactly he needs for equipment. But yes, we already talked about, 2 monitors, probably at a minimum. I get all that. But it didn't make sense for me to just buy things before he gets in the door and sees what we actually have.
I'm thinking more planning out the power and how to
Yeah,
locate these things.
But again, if for 30 days he's just using a laptop, he'll be okay. He will be okay.
Well, and a positive feature of that room is that their power is actually external on the wall, like already in the racer strip. So if it needed to be relocated, the school could come use some of the existing stuff and relocate it, whether it's, to the left or the right. It's not like we've got to put holes in the wall to relocate it completely somewhere else. It is already on the exterior of the wall.
And we already did that for basically the closet that Ashley has for an office, the previous facilities person, when we converted that from, and it's a janitor's closet. It has a floor sink in it.
This one here, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And, Tantascwa came and they dropped some lines because the power in that room, there was one outlet and it's at the front, right near the door. And obviously you can't put a door there, a desk there, because it's in the door. So the desk had to be to the back of the room. So, they came in and they put electricity in the back of the room to make it work. So, yeah. We can definitely make it work. We just need you to approve the money so we can get moving.
Donna, do you have a question?
I did. So kind of on the same idea, I don't have any issue with, I think $4,000 to renovate a room for this is not actually that bad. But my concern is the space, not only just the electricity, right? That's, your thing, but the space, because all the IT peeps that I know, they've got, monitors and equipment, and then they've got laptops piled up that they need to repair or recover, or, they've got stuff that they need. And I don't know, you mentioned the dimensions of the room, and I've always passed by that little teeny room, not paying too much attention to it. I mean, I'm guessing it's smaller than that room, which is not very big. So I'm just wondering, and I know that there's no space, because poor Kevin's in a closet.
Well, that's
Over at
like-
the safety
no.
complex,
Oh,
you know.
That's actually an office, I believe.
Is he in an office?
I think so, yeah. Might be small, but it is an office.
But the space is tough, so
So,
it made sense, you know, I thought it was that room.
yeah, no, so
Right,
he
but-
indicated that the room size was actually bigger than the cubicle he has now.
Okay.
You know, it would be different than, you know, he's not going to be sitting at his desk 8 hours a day. He'll
True.
be in, you know, in the different buildings. And, yeah, I mean, they talk about a bench, right, when you're fixing things. And so, you know, we might have to find some other area when that is happening. You know, I know when we buy multiple multiple computers and they image them, and I know that's more of a process where you're doing them all at the same time. So we're gonna have to just deal with that, and we will.
No, and so the part two of that, knowing that, you know, he is the IT guy, assuming that you're gonna have to equip him. So, and assuming because he is the IT person, you've got to get him some good stuff, right? So has that been factored? Like, where's that money coming from?
So that will come from the computer replacement budget that we have
It
every
will.
year. And I already factored that in. You know, I mean, he might want an iPad. I don't know what he's gonna want. I
Right.
mean, I know the guys that come here now, I mean, a lot of them, you know, when they first started coming in, they were working off laptops, now they have iPads. So, you know, if that's what he needs to do his job, then that's what we'll do. And I don't know, I think this is very doable, and, you know, like I said, I mean, you guys you know the space as well as I do, there's nowhere else to.
Right, and then finally, you know, I don't know what staffing is looking like. I think all of the positions have now been filled, right? The IT, the facilities and all that, right? All those positions have been filled. So the next thing is, has there been any planning, like what happens next? Like, do you rearrange and triple up in rooms?
Well, again, the room
You know?
sizes are pretty small, I mean,
Or
there's
do
a
you
desk
look
and
at
files.
Brookfield Road and?
Well, you know, I mean, that's something that has been discussed in the past, and I'm sure it will be brought up again. You know, you guys could reach out to the selectmen, to the chair, and see where that stands, but,
Well, as
Yeah.
Joni was saying, the FTEs that that we're looking for this year are already accounted for, we already have space. So other than the IT person, there's no additional space needs for the staffing levels that we had built into this budget. So it only becomes an issue down the road when a department's trying to add additional space, and maybe we'll hopefully remember that question of, you know, it's X dollars to bring on an extra person, but, you know, what do we have for space requirements, and can we make sure that's factored in at the time that comes forward? I would just say on a reasonable set of tools that he needs to do the job, not a, let's get you the best and one of everything to do that. And if, it's nice that you can take it out of the existing budget, but I don't want to see that computer supply budget get depleted early in the year and you're holding off in the end. So if it looks like the reasonable needs that you're gonna have for this position to get started and running is gonna put a strain on that budget and your plans for the year.
no, I mean,
Okay, I was just gonna say, include an article in the warrant so
yeah,
we can
no,
cover it
I mean,
now.
that's not, I had already factored that into the budget because I knew we were creating that position.
Okay.
But, I mean, he's either gonna want a computer or a laptop. He's only getting one. He's gonna make a decision. If he wants a laptop, then we'll get him a docking station, and that's what he's gonna use. You know, I mean, I envision that he's gonna want a minimum of 2 monitors. I mean, you guys are the IT guys, so that seems fair to me and doesn't seem unreasonable. And then if, you know, whether he would rather work off of a laptop when he's going from building to building, or he wants to work off of an iPad or something, then, you know, all those things seem reasonable to me, but, I mean, the equipment that we buy, you know, it's not, you know, it's not the top of the line, but it's also, we don't buy, you know, we buy good equipment. I mean, so, we have a plan in place. We have been fairly consistent with when we're replacing equipment, we're buying, everything the same, so that there isn't an issue when it's a repair or whatever. You already have parts on, if you need a power supply, you've got a power supply. You don't have 5 different computers and brands. So we've streamlined a lot over the years, and, my goal is to continue to move forward and, do it at a, what's reasonable, but also gives people what they need to do their jobs.
Okay, are we ready for a vote? Is there a motion to approve?
I just have one tangential question.
I really
Well,
thought this was
what-
going to be simple.
But when I left a couple of years ago, there were lots of proposals outstanding for new DPW garage, new senior center, something for 8 Brookfield Road. Where do all these things stand as far as, because some of this stuff could address some of the space issues if we know where we're going long-term. Where is that? I haven't-
There have been some feasibility studies done, there's some that are still in the works, but I think that's a bigger discussion than what I'm here to discuss tonight.
No, I agree, but, I mean, these are supposed to be delivered within 6 months of when I left 2 years ago. So it's 2 years later and we still don't have them at this point?
No, I mean, there are some, but I mean, look we all know they did a lot of feasibility studies, there's no way that everything can be done
At one
all at
time.
one time. And I'm not gonna sit here and not agree with all of you that, I mean, space is an issue, for sure. So, but again, it's not up to me to decide whether to use 8 Brookfield Road or, to renovate or, make improvements in any town building. So that's a bigger discussion than what I'm prepared to talk about tonight.
Okay.
So, we have a motion to
I'll
approve
make a
this?
motion that we transfer from the reserve fund $4,000 to the town hall purchases services account, number 11932-52000.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Larry, did you have one further question?
I'm sorry.
It just seems to me pretty clear that you've taken things as far as you can, as well as you can, based on what you know. None of us knows anything about tomorrow. You've done, I think, a really good job. And it comes in the context, I think, of continuing increase in community needs, always a question mark about community willingness to pay for those needs, and government capabilities, not as to quality, but as to funding support, which sounds to me like a running skirmish on the growth curve. And I don't know that there's much of a way around it. Attitudinally, I hope the public understands that this is a microcosm, and it's going to, in different circumstances, be done over and over again. I think the questions were excellent questions. They apply to the specific and the general. But you're going to, in the future, be saying the same thing, just change the noun in the sentence. They're going to be asking the same questions. And I just hope the public appreciates what is actually going on. So there.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's 8-0. Thank you.
I know, really, huh?
All right.
I told Tom 5 minutes. You'll be here for 4 hours.
Tom knows better, he's been here before.
I don't know if I dare go here, but since I'm here and we're here, if we
The
could just do the
AED one?
AED. Hopefully, there's no question. The one at the senior center is broken. It cannot be repaired.
It's about $1,345. And just to let you know, we bought a whole bunch about 3 years ago. This is not
It's
one
not
of
one of
those.
them.
So this is an older one, and they did try to fix it, I believe.
Tried to fix it and covered under warranty, and it only holds an 8-year warranty, and it's actually 10 years old.
Oh.
I kind of noticed the new one has an 8-year warranty, I believe I saw. in the
So
specs.
is it broken or just past its lifespan?
Past its lifespan.
But they tried to replace the battery, and which then took, what was it, 3 days to
So
fully
the ins-
charge?
Yeah, the instructions for it are to replace the battery, and then it should clear out the error codes by the time it does its internal reset. The error codes didn't reset, they work with the manufacturer, and the average lifespan of it is 10 years, and that's the communication that we got back from the manufacturer on it.
And they gave you an allowance against that one of
They did,
$250.
they
That
did,
was-
yeah.
And that's not a lot of money for AED.
No, and it's definitely, I mean, the town made the decision 3 years ago approximately to put AEDs in all the town buildings, and so, you know, we want to get this,
This is the senior center, people.
it is the senior center.
Well, and a difference
an
of going
important
forward is
location.
we know the age and the lifespan of the units now, and as we track the different items we have, we shouldn't have to come back and ask for reserves
Right.
funds. We'll make sure that it's on our annual budget when it's needed.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, how many AEDs are in that building?
Just one within the building?
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any, this is 10 years ago, has there any been increase in capability in the newer units that you're going to replace it with?
So we're going with the same type of unit that we use on our ambulances here in town, and we have the supplies readily available for those, and they're already under the state contract for the best negotiated price.
And again, it just goes to also just the consistency that there's the same AED in all the buildings.
Yeah, for training, I can see why that would be
Exactly, yep.
beneficial.
Now, we have everything on a cycle, don't we? All the ADEs that we've got?
So we purchased all, with the exception of the senior center and the recreation area, I believe all of the AEDs were purchased at the same point in
Same time,
time,
yeah.
which was about 3 years ago.
Right. So, okay, so senior center always had one, or had one prior?
Well, They've had one for a
They had one
while.
prior,
Okay.
and then the rec area had one prior.
So I guess, will this now, was that factored into the whole cycle of replacement and all that?
Going forward.
For the
Going
future?
forward? Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
we won't, they have an 8-year, the 8-year warranty, 10-year life cycle. So we haven't budgeted anything, we'll be 7 years out till we do.
Okay, I see.
But you have a process to factor it in so that 7 years from now,
Yes,
when we're sitting
we
here, it'll
will.
be part of the
That-
budget
that's what I'm
versus
getting at.
wherever
That's
we
what I'm
go.
getting at. I don't
We
think-
have a cycle for replacing police cruisers, we have a
Yes.
cycle for replacing other things. I
Correct.
think that's probably the value of the
Yes.
position here is, you know, here are all the roofs we have in town, or roofs we have in town, and here's when they need to be replaced given the life cycle. Here's all the doors and hinges and how often they need to be replaced versus maintained, and get on that cycle.
Yes.
So we're doing the budgets, and there's lots of pressure for level-funded budgets, try to squeeze it in here. We kind of know that this needs to be done, or else it becomes a
Yep.
problem
And
down the road.
if you think about it, there's a lot of areas in the detailed budgets in the departments where I'll put like in parentheses, like every 3 years, or, you know, every other year, depending on what the subject matter is. And so, you know, we would do the same thing with the AEDs, you're correct. I mean, that's one of the goals of Ashley's position, is to be able to have actual replacement schedules in place so that we don't have to do this. But, you know, it's going to be a little while. She's been here, what, 2 months?
2 months now.
So it's going to be a little while before we get to that point.
Are those going to be on a regular maintenance schedule?
So they actually have an inspection requirement. We need to
Annual, I think it is.
Inspect them annually, and then the pads that are in them should be replaced every other year or after they are used. So they're not frequently used in the buildings. If usually an emergency, the ambulance comes out and they're replaced through that process. But that is on the calendar now, and one of the things, like Barbara said, is I'm working on a building inventory for each building. Like, we know that everything has a door, a light, but like, what kind is it? How should we replace it? And that's one of the items that's on the running list.
Just like fire extinguisher, annual inspection.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve this reserve fund transfer?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? 8-0.
Okay, thank you very much.
That one was a little shorter.
A little bit. You can just throw them all in the mailbox downstairs, Cal? Okay.
I'll try to remember.
Okay, otherwise I'll see you tomorrow.
That's right, you will.
Want to give her 2 now? So she's only missing 1?
No, it's okay. Next, we have Tom Chamberlain. We've allotted 10 minutes, John.
Good. I can get my presentation done in 5. It's all the questions you people have.
I've watched your presentation
your
twice
turn.
to the selectmen.
This is a request for $27,360 from the be transferred to the tree warden purchase of services for continuing removal of dead tree and pruning from the Gypsy Mouth
Right.
Odyssey, or whatever you want to call it, disaster. I don't know what you call it. Oh,
It's a
you called it
natural
a natural
disaster, I'm
disaster,
calling it.
actually. You did too. Now, why was it more this year than last year, or is this just cumulative? Because it seemed like the gypsy moths were much worse last year.
So that's why the trees are dying this year, is trees leaf out once a year. So they leafed out in April, gypsy moths killed them, defoliated them. Internally, the trees with the drought and everything else tried to survive, and, the accumulative effect of 3 years of defoliation and over 4.5 to 5 years of below normal rainfall. This year now being finally the exception that, we're well above normal, but the prior 4 or 5 years had been below normal rainfall, especially during those periods when the trees needed the water the most. We were running droughts, and matter of fact, one summer, I believe it was the summer of 15, we ran a 9-inch deficit of rainfall that summer over what normal rainfall event would be. So there was just no water in the ground for the trees to recover from those defoliations, and even though the trees have reserves, that's what they were living on. And this year, there were some mortality last year. I was taking a few trees down last year, probably a half a dozen or 8 or 9 off the top of my head, I recall. But, till the trees leafed out this year, we really had no real good concept or picture of how bad it was. And then once, as I think I'd been before the board, prior to, during our town meeting discussions of the budget, I had even indicated then that I had concerns of the number of tree mortality we would be experiencing. So, as the committee may be aware, due to my participation in a national advisory committee of the Forest Service, I was able to obtain the services of the Forest Service through their Urban Forest Strike Team, which was bringing in trained arborists to, the focus of that is to bring in trained arborists to help communities assess and facilitate recovery following natural weather-related disasters that are FEMA eligible. And so their focus is that kind of thing. So this obviously wasn't a FEMA eligible disaster, but I was able to discuss with both the state forester and the regional Forest Service person that this might be a good deployment exercise for those strike team members, and they agreed. So at no cost to the town, we had over 12 trained arborists in town, touring the town, assessing the damage, and the results of their survey work is this page that I handed out to you. So let me just briefly go over these numbers. The top darker gray box is the actual number of trees by size class. So you see the 6 to 12, that relates to the size of the tree, the diameter of the tree. The total number that are dead that we inventoried, and the total number that needed to be pruned. In other words, they're still like basically half alive, and they're worth pruning instead of removing to try to save them. The next block down, the lighter grays, breaks out the above the top box into public trees that are not in close proximity to the utility lines, and the same thing with the prunes. And then the very lighter shade, or what may, depending on how the photocopy came out, the third kind of box down is those trees that are nearest the utility lines. So that's if you add up those two numbers, it equals the numbers in the top box.
So Tom, can you just make it clear the difference between public trees and would you say private trees down the bottom?
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
Okay?
7 feet from the
So the
center.
final box is where we looked at some of the private trees, not all of the private trees that are dead next to the roads, but to assist National Grid We tried to where there are no public trees, but there were private trees hanging over their utility lines. We tried to capture some of those numbers. And conversely, where there were private trees that were on the opposite side of the street, but greatly hanging over the public street, I thought those were a number we would like to quantify to address, because obviously that, there are, any private tree could eventually fall in the street, but, the worst ones, what does that look like? What kind of a number? And so that's what the bottom box is. And when I made my presentation to the Board of Selectmen, they agreed with my recommendation that where we have private trees with no utilities, i.e. that 87 number total, that as we prune or remove the trees along that side of the street, we would at least prune the dead limbs hanging over the street. We wouldn't be taking the tree down, but we'd at least minimize the danger to, the public safety danger. So, bottom line is, National Grid has agreed to start addressing their 188 dead trees and 30 pruned trees in the community. Their priority is to do those trees that are hanging over what they call their three-phase wire, which is the main distribution system in town. And basically, if you look at the top of the pole, there are 3 wires, or they're bundled together in a bundle of 3 wires. That is the main distribution system. And so they're going to be addressing those trees first, and then as their time and finances allowed, be working on the remaining trees, single phase, which probably serves, if I was to break it out, it's probably 30% is 3-phase in town and 70% is single phase. So there's a lot more wires, trees in the single phase than there is a 3-phase for National Grid. But at least they've agreed to start. So with all that being said, what the town is ultimately responsible to do, and what I'm here asking for as a start, is really the numbers that are in the second box down. So we have at least 291 dead trees, dead public street trees, and another 109 that need to be removed. I have started in conversations with Leon. We started using this year's, tree warden line item budget to start moving those trees, and we have. We've been working on a number of streets, depending on the availability of myself to obtain police details. Over the course of the summer, that's been a bit of a challenge with the number of projects that are construction projects and road projects that are happening in town. I'm kind of the guy at the bottom of the list. So when I can't get a detail, I can't put them on a main street, which is where I'd also like to focus my efforts, because those are the more highly traveled streets, the ones that have more school buses on them, et cetera. And I've got to take them and put them on a back road or a side street, which eventually needs to get done, but would not be my priority, from starting. But the bottom line is I've started to use those funds. I will be out of those funds the end of this month. Currently, the tree crew by contract, which is the truck, a chipper, and 2-man crew, is $1,880 a day for an 8-hour day. And my police detail costs vary depending on the officer, from a low of about $350 to just under $400. So, I could be spending somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,300 a day to address the work.
Why the need for a police detail? I thought we've changed the law in the state that we could just use a flagman. You don't need to have a police officer or a police detail.
Well, so I had a conversation with Greg on this, and currently, as you know, he just put on a number of, he's been understaffed, and he just put on a number of new employees, and they have yet to be trained to be flagmen. So they're not, yet available, and obviously his responsibility, if he was to say, do I pave a road or give Tom a flagman or one of his best people, it's going to go to paving a road. It's not going to be, Tom, you can have a flag person.
I mean, I would imagine, though, that seeking out a qualified flag person would be a lot cheaper than getting a police
Well,
officer.
unfortunately, it's not. I've done some initial inquiries. I don't have the numbers to share with you directly, but I did reach out to Northern Tree Service to say, okay, can you provide a flagman? And their rate was right around $370 for the day, which falls right smack dab in the middle of our police detail.
I'd like to
rate.
address that. If the speed limit is 45 or higher on a road, it has to be a police officer. It can't be a flagman. That's state law. And under the Patrick administration, when they changed the flagman rule and if they approved it, the flagman rate of pay is a prevailing wage that's within $1.50 of what it costs to have a police officer in the same place. And that happened under Governor Patrick, and that was his way of kind of smoothing things over at the time.
Thank you. I'm glad you had the numbers better.
I do,
I
because
was
it
not fully
irritated the
prepared
heck out
for
of me
that.
when they did that.
I was, right. Because this same question came up at the selectmen's meeting. And so I'd have, Greg has agreed that once his new hires have gone through, flag school training and are certified to be out there, that I'll have access to them on those streets. That's better suited. On some of the streets in town, most notably Brookfield Road and Fisk Hill and some of the narrower streets of Arnold Road and Cedar Street and New Boston Road, around those curvy sections, having a police detail is probably a lot safer all in all than a flag person. But again, it's a work in progress, so.
And in your presentation, you emphasized the need to get this started right away, because when the
Yes.
trees start to lose the leaves, we lose efficiency, because now you can't tell the dead trees.
So the question is, why am I asking for the reserve fund? So as I indicated, my route line item budget will be all but expended by the end of this month. The special town meeting is not scheduled until the end of October. So to keep at least 2 days a week, a tree crew on the streets with a detail, again, I can't, say yes or no to what day was what to get a detail, but my plan is to continue to work on the main streets in town, and that is why I'm asking for this reserve fund to bridge the period from when I run out of my line item budget to the special town meeting. Now, the efficiency also of the crew is enhanced when, as they drive down the street, they can tell where the dead tree is very easily right now, because it's the one without the leaves versus a live green tree has the leaves. So, and the same goes especially true for the pruning because of the dead limbs. So in other words, half the tree just needs to be pruned, or a third of the tree, and obviously those limbs are very visual now, and so that's why I want to keep the process going before we have our fall leaf drop. Then that officially will be, they can tell them, a trained person in the bucket can tell it, but it does slow that process down. They obviously have to be much more visually, accurate as they drive down the streets, and I'm sure they will miss some of the dead limbs. Probably won't miss the dead trees, but we'll miss some of the dead limbs. Again, I've been tree warden for 30-plus years, so, I know the realities of trying to be out there working in the street and driving your truck and looking for dead limbs. So the inventory will help. We'll give them street addresses. We'll give them descriptions of trees, and that will also help the efficiency of that. But at the end of the day, it's very visual right now, and I want to take the greatest advantage of that going forward, if you people agree that the transfer is appropriate.
Did National Grid, I know there was a debate and you didn't have your information at the time you presented to the selectmen, but you were trying to negotiate. They would only take the limbs that were going to be over there, not the whole. If the whole tree was dead, you were hoping that they'd be willing to take down the entire tree and not just the limbs. Did they agree to that, Tom?
So in general, yes, they did.
Okay.
What they have came back and asked for is basically what they said is, we will address all of the utility side trees, okay? We will address them in our priority, three-phase versus single-phase, and all they are asking is that we provide for a detail officer or flag person on those streets that's appropriate, that, for traffic reasons needs that. The key thing with having a detail officer or a flag person is also goes to the crew efficiency. When they can focus their efforts on taking the tree down and not worrying about when the car is coming or you know, asking that one of the ground guys having to stop the car, you know, to be safe for the public to go by or not, you know, so they can remove the tree. You know, that increases their efficiency and their ability to get the tree down on the ground. So, you know, even though, you know, I'd love to say send them out there with no flagmen or nobody, especially on the back streets, I'm reluctant to do that because I do know that it increases their efficiency. When there's that ground person, the flag person, or a police officer, you know, they can move and do the tree removal much quicker than if they're worried about, well, when is the next car coming by, and is it okay for me to make this cut and drop the limb? And so, again, it's, yeah, I wish there were some better answers to a lot of these questions, but it really all comes down to efficiency and public safety.
So Tom, roughly how many trees a day are you able to take down with this crew? And is your plan to get all 400 trees both removed and trimmed over this fiscal year, or is there a multi-year plan for going after those with some type of prioritization?
So my plan, first of all, a couple of questions that are really hard to quantify, okay? But at the end of the day, the actual number I'm looking at is the 291. Okay, remember I said the 479 was the public utility side trees. So National Grid has agreed to take those down. So is it a concern that they get them down? Yes, I am concerned, and I want to see them taken down. But the funding request that I am making is based on the 291 and the 109. And some coverage for police details for the, and we'll get to that when we get to the special town meeting article. I can go much greater detail on that. As to how many trees a day they can take down, that's one reason why we broke it down into size class. Clearly, the smaller the tree, the more they can take down. The larger the tree, the longer it's going to take. Then you can add to that, where is the tree located? Is it along a section of street where it's not in front of somebody's house and it's a wooded area where they don't need to be, I don't want to say they won't be as careful or as safe, but you know, when they drop the limb, if it falls into the woods, it's not a big deal, okay? They got to pick it up, they got to clean it. If it's a large limb and it drops on your lawn in your front yard, then they've got a divot to take care of afterwards. So that means they cut smaller pieces. You know, they attack taking the tree down differently than if it's more in a forested area. So that affects, you know, how many trees a day they can get down. There are some of the larger trees. You see those trees that are 30-plus inches? They'll be spending the better part of a day just on that one tree. So, yeah, I wish I could give you a better answer than that. Right now, you know, in a mixed kind of setting, you know, there may be trimming, you know, because as they go down a street, they're doing all the work. They're doing the removals, they're doing the pruning, so when we're done on that street, we're done. I don't have to go back, you know, that type of thing. And, you know, so a lot depends on, you know, what the trees are like in that area. But in general, they're attacking, yeah, I hate to give generalizations, because then if, you know, you do the math and you say, well, it's going to take a lot less, you know. But, you know, a lot of the smaller trees, they get 4 or 5 of them down. They might get 3 or 4 trees pruned, okay? Other days where it's a big tree, it's 3/4 to almost the whole day just on that one big tree.
Okay, so you've spent your budget, I'm guessing 25, 30,000 to date. You're asking for another 27,000 here. What's the number you'll be asking for town meeting?
So the number I'll be asking for town meeting, let me pull that up here.
And you can generalize, but you didn't like generalizing
Yeah,
on
no,
the last
I
question.
know I had it here somewhere. Hold on. I don't want to.
250.
Okay, I know I had the numbers here somewhere.
Are you here for a finance committee meeting
No way.
or another meeting?
I know I had it.
Okay.
Okay, so the number right now that I'll be asking is, well, actually, it's in the article, but I'll be reducing it depending on what action you may take tonight, is 270,000. If you approve the transfer tonight, that amount will be taken off of this number, so it'll be the $27,000 and change less. But right now, I'm looking to ask for $270,000 to remove,
To remove trees,
to remove trees.
to remove 500 trees.
To remove
91 trees.
400.
Well, it says, okay, well, it
400.
says,
Remove and
291 plus the
prune,
180.
to remove and prune 400 trees,
Yeah.
and to cover the police detail
These
for
two,
National Grid to remove the
in here.
228 trees.
And that does include now that these trees are down and people, don't like the look and they want new trees put back, they'll,
Wait a minute,
You're
can you
looking
say
for
that
additional
again? What did you just say?
after these trees are all down, people are gonna say, geez, there used to be a tree there, it looks like a blank space, so now can we go back and plant a new tree? And
Well, I
That's
can
that
tell you
following
before
year.
that, it does not include stump grinding. So even if they don't want a new tree, it does not include stump grinding. No way can I figure that in without just disregarding.
so I realize I'm setting you up here, but do we have to do all of these? Is there some way to prioritize them and say, let me get the half of these this year and, we'll go for the others next year?
That's an awful lot of money to prune trees. And look I'm all about public safety here, but here you said, and hear me out, because I just want to understand this. You inventoried over 500 dead trees.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, are you saying that 400 of them, right, which is the two numbers here in the bottom, that's 400?
Yep.
That's for 27,000. Where are you getting the $270,000
No, that's
number?
not, that's the total number. He just wants to start.
Sorry.
That's,
So
the
the-
27
so-
is not going to cover that at all.
Oh, no.
It's gonna give them 10% of that number.
27 is going to get them started.
Yes.
Until,
So you're not, so the
Getting exposed.
27,000 is not going to take all of these 400
Oh,
trees?
Oh, no.
Yep, a
No,
percentage.
no, no.
So you're,
If it's 27
so you're
tonight, my
already,
question was to lead into what's coming.
right, so you're already prioritizing, I'm assuming. Do you, okay,
So there is a way to do risk assessment. We call it tree risk assessment. So when I have 2 dead trees, okay, one in front of your house, one in front of the high school, okay, which one has a greater target? The one at the high school.
why?
More kids,
Mine would go
More
right
people.
across Brookfield Road.
okay?
No one gets to the school.
All right.
But the DPW will cut it up and move it to the side when it happens.
So
Well, let me-
my point
so-
exactly.
so
There's
I-
a way to quantify that, but at the end of the day, as a taxpayer in this town, there isn't one person who's not going to say, when are you going to take down the dead tree in front of my house? Because it's a threat to my house, my kids standing out front in the school bus, the
Mm-hmm. Okay, Tom,
mailman that
but
delivers
so-
the mail.
So
I
if
mean,
you're on
you
the
know.
side where the wires are, most people will call, myself included, will call National Grid and say, hey, I get this 200-year-old maple
Yeah,
that's precariously hanging over my drop line.
mm-hmm.
And they're more than likely going to come and send someone. So there has to be some work with National Grid, sounds like you are, and they have to
And
be,
that's the-
That's the 188.
That's the third
there
box
has to be
number
more
down.
than that, that
500,000.
National Grid can help with. I guess, where are these other trees, when you say public safety and all that, I'm assuming that they're on roadways?
So.
I just, for my personal thing, I walk up and down Fisk Hill pretty much all the time. All you have to do is look up at the canopy of the trees. There are massive dead limbs hanging over Fisk Hill Road.
No
That
doubt.
could come down
Johnny,
at any
I
No
time.
doubt.
apologize, and I'll give
You don't have
Barbara
to
the blame.
apologize.
Because she had all this information, because I gave it to her, so if she didn't forward it to you along with my request, but.
No, that's-
This is the map.
The
This is,
map wasn't included.
no, I didn't, because,
May I?
sure.
So, Tom, would you mind just addressing Mike's original question way
Sure.
back at the beginning? Public versus private tree?
Pardon?
What differentiates public versus private?
So as I would hope you people would understand, when a road is accepted in the town of Sturbridge,
Yeah.
there's the actual width of the pavement, and then on either side of that is the actual right-of-way, which is what we accept. Working with the DPW director, we generalized a list of how wide those right-of-ways are on each street in town that was surveyed. And when the crews went out, they were given that general information that said, you know, if there's an existing stone wall, you know, if it's inside the wall, it's a town tree. If it's outside the wall, it's not. If it's within 6 feet of the edge of this pavement, if it's within 12 feet the edge of that street, then those trees were counted as public trees.
So it's not,
What gives us the latitude of that,
Yeah.
okay, is Mass General Laws, Chapter 87, okay, which specifically states for public shade trees, over the course of time, when the boundary cannot be determined, clearly determined, whether the tree is on or not on public property within a right-of-way, it's presumed to be on public property. So the town, it's clear in the law, the town has the responsibility if we can't fully determine. And at the end of the day, I would hate to say what it would be to go out and survey every property in town to find the exact right-of-way.
well, I'm just, because I know when I did some construction, I was told the right-of-way is, you know, center line of the road, 27 feet to either side of the.
And that, well, and again, then that 27 feet number varies from street to street and even on street to street. I can tell you that, you know, in some cases in Fisk Hill, it's even more than 27 feet because of previous acquisitions, and that holds through. That's a great generalization, but I can also show you on
Already
just
seen
about
it.
every older street in town, and what I mean by that is, you know, the Arnold Road, the Cedar Streets, the New Boston Road, and even Fisk Hill to some extent, okay? When they constructed the road years ago, they took the easy way, so if it was a little bit of dig here and fill here, they didn't do the digging, they did the filling. So the street's not always in the center of the right-of-way. So that 27 feet, you know, is a great generalization.
Okay.
Okay, and, you know, so, believe me, Greg and I, you know, angst over this all the time, okay? Is it a public tree or is it not?
So I had asked my question just to see what the big
Sorry, I
picture-
hope I got to most of your answers, but,
And I just asked the question on the total amount, so we got the big picture.
Right.
But tonight, your request is just for the 27,000.
27,
We'll have
it's-
another shot at you when we review the article to figure out how much
That's
we
right.
want to fund
Yep.
beyond the 27,000 that you're asking for tonight. But if you have other questions about that big picture, that's fine.
May not be timely, but would last year be considered an anomaly, far above the norm of number of trees lost?
oh, absolutely.
You don't expect the same number to be lost this year?
No. But no, I do not expect the same number. You know, the gypsy moth population had all but collapsed in Sturbridge this year, so we didn't have that. What I am witnessing, and if you look carefully, you will see that some of the trees that did leaf out this year are are browning prematurely.
The oaks.
So, right, in the oaks. So will there be a few more tree mortality next year? More than likely there will be, but, you know, hopefully that's back to a number that I can handle in my normal budget. Okay?
Two questions.
Yep.
One, and for me, I don't know enough about trees, but can you explain the urgency to needing to remove these trees in the same year that they've died? Do they really become a hazard that quickly?
So, the short answer is no, but the long answer is I don't know. In that, there's no way of, for me, really telling if the tree just died this year, and that's fine. Okay, but if it had started to die the year before, that's now 2 years, and we're going to start, and if just be observant between now and the town meeting as you drive, and look at how many small dead limbs are starting to fall in the roads, okay? And that's only going to get worse if we don't address the trees. I can tell you now that I've already had residents call concerned about those small dead limbs falling in their driveways, concerned about their kids waiting out front for their school bus, concerned about the limbs falling on their cars and they're parked in their driveways. You know, I don't want to, you know, or exacerbate that this is a public safety, but I think, you know, from a liability point, we've surveyed, we know what the trees are, we know how many we have, and whatever the town votes to do, that's what we're going to do. But at the end of the day, you know, will that keep the lawyers away? I'm not sure.
There's pieces of trees all over New Boston Road and Allen Road where I live. I drive both of those every day,
Yep.
and there's just pieces all over the place. We
And
finally had to call because there was a tree, it was disintegrating right at the edge of the road, and every time I drove by it, I said, is this going to be when I'm going to get hit with the limb? Because it was all, had all kinds of mold
You know, I
growing
mean,
on it,
I
and everything
can't,
was
you're
bad.
kind of asking me how fast is a tree going to fall. I can't predict the weather, okay?
Well, I'm not asking for an
You know,
exact answer. I ballpark.
They are, when it's dead, they will start to fall. You get rains like we did, you know, over this today, where it's 2 to 3 inches of heavy rain. That starts soaking into the wood. That weighs the wood down. That's going to cause the, you know, the wood to break. Okay? You know, so is it happening now? Yes, the smaller limbs are falling. 2 weekends ago, when we had a thunderstorm come through town, there were 3 private trees that failed and took power out. And then the other weekend, there was 1 branch that failed, took power out. The private trees, like I said, were private trees. The branch was a public shade tree branch that failed and took the power out. So we're already seeing an increase in power outages.
Okay, my second question is, have we seen, are there any other towns proposing or starting a massive cut and removal or prune and removal on this scale?
I have no knowledge of what other towns are doing.
I know you talked about a plan that you were going to do, you wanted to deal with taking down trees that needed pruning as you moved down the road so you could knock them done. But wouldn't in some ways be cost effective now while they're still leaved to at least identify the dead ones, put a big orange X or something so that in the middle of the winter you could still go back and take them out knowing that you've already identified this tree as dead?
Okay, who's going to do that?
You're the tree warden.
Well, yeah, I mean, isn't this part of this plan?
I'm sorry, Joni. As a stipend employee, I think I've gone well beyond the requirements of tree warden in this job. All right? And I brought in the latest technology to have it addressed through our GIS system, and I'm relying on that. If you want someone to go around and start painting
I'll volunteer.
500 trees, I don't even have the money in my budget to buy the paint.
I'll volunteer.
I don't have the money in my budget to buy the paint.
You have an inventory that at, 1 Maple Street, there's a 6-inch oak that is
Yep.
dead.
Yep.
Now, if there's 4 6-inch oaks and you're doing it in the middle of winter, you have to figure out which one. But if there's only one oak in that lot, you can find it and go from there.
Correct.
Tom, really a secondary question. Is the determination of the circumference of a tree, at what point you measure the circumference, determined consistently by the vertical distance along the trunk from the ground, or
The
some other?
industry standard is at 4.5 feet.
So you go to
Above
the
the
ground,
ground. Yep.
go up 4.5 feet, whatever that spot,
That's the diameter.
that's okay, thank you.
Yeah, not the circumference, the diameter.
The diameter, yeah. Right. Yeah, these tree classes, that's diameter class, 6 to 12 inches in diameter, 13 to 18 inches in diameter. Yep. So if you'll notice, we've lost a lot of, large size trees too. I mean, a lot of them are smaller ones, good, but, 13 to 18 inch, those are your trees that have been around, for 75, 80, 90, maybe even 100 years.
Right.
And then the bigger ones have been around for even longer. When you get up above the 30-inch class, we're approaching 200-year-old trees, if not more.
In the winter, if there's a freezing rain, that's dead weight on a dead tree, isn't it?
Yes.
So if it gets windy, problems can be expected at some point on, question is, which tree, when? Yes? or-
Yes. yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, as the tree is now dead, the wood becomes more brittle, whereas if it was more of a live tree, the wood would be green and have a little more flexibility to it, to bend, whereas now it won't bend. It'll just, at some point, snap when it reaches that, literally the breaking point, where the weight of the ice, exceeds the structural strength of that particular
Yep.
piece of wood in the limb.
Thank you.
Do you anticipate continuing this through the winter, late fall, winter, the cutting?
Yes, I do. Again, the weather being what it is, if it's, a very snowy winter, we're not going to be able to do very much. But I do want to address this all in this fiscal year, yes.
But at that point, it's going to be more difficult to
Yeah,
identify the trees.
again,
once
we
the
may,
foliage is
we
down.
may just suspend the program for a week or 2 or 3, depending on the weather and the road conditions too. Clearly to have, if the road, if it's been snowy and there's a lot of ice still remaining on the road and they're narrow, we won't be out there with the crews, so.
Or if you get $250,000 in town meeting, you might get a couple cans of spray paint and find somebody who can go out and spray those, so you know exactly where those trees are during the winter.
That's not what I'm asking
It's
the money for.
really not a bad idea. I mean, it shouldn't be something to joke about. I mean, to mark the trees, it just makes common sense to me to do that. It's a lot of money, Tom.
The tree crew wouldn't do it because you said when they go on a street, they do all the trees regardless of the priority.
Right.
So that really won't be marking anything.
No. I mean,
right.
I am not asking to go out and mark the trees. If you really think there's
Well,
a
if they need to-
benefit to
if
that.
they need to come down,
If
Tom.
you really think there's a benefit, I don't see the benefit to it. As your tree warden, I do not see the benefit of doing that.
But you said that during the winter, it would be very difficult to identify the dead trees from the healthy trees,
No, I know that.
right?
Yes, he did say that.
It is, yeah, it is more challenging, absolutely. Yep.
So why wouldn't you mark them? If this is going to
In
carry
my-
into the
in
winter,
my
how are you going to
opinion-
know which one's
in
dead
my
and which one's not?
opinion, The cost benefit of spending the money to pay someone to go out and mark all the trees versus
I said I'd volunteer and help, Tom. I'm not kidding.
I'm not in a position to accept that type of volunteer.
Well, I'm just saying that I'm sure there are others like me who would do it, is my point.
Well, I have asked to reconstitute the Tree Wardens Advisory Committee. Sign up.
I don't think I could. Could I? As a finance committee advisory
Anyway,
committee.
I know we're taking it far afield, but I just had another thought. Why don't the arborists mark the tree? Is there, are they unable to say definitively that that tree is dead? Is that why?
No, it was not the way we set up the inventory programs, the only reason why they didn't mark them,
Okay.
okay?
Because did they physically identify each tree? Did they go?
Yes, we actually had a tablet that was GIS, coordinated and, synced to the town's GIS system. And they were able to physically be in front of the street, have the picture of the house, the ortho photo, and locate each one of those trees with a dot. Now, if you know the GIS system, occasionally, even though you're as accurate as you can be in the field, when it comes down to put it on the map, there is some data collection and error. And as I found out, our town's GIS system has yet to be fully geospatially corrected. So there are inherent errors in our town's GIS system. So, it is what it is. We did the best we could with the technology we had. We got good numbers. We got good size class, diameters. I mean, the basic information is there. The tree crews are qualified to be able to tell. Does it take them a little extra time, 30 seconds here to slow down and look a little closer to the tree? Yes, it does, okay? But, with marking the tree, at the end of the day, the effort that goes into that offset, the wasted time. I don't personally think so. I just don't think that's,
I don't think it's a point of wasting time, Tom. I think it's a point of, you're coming into wintertime, you need to know which trees are dead, you mark them out, you're not gonna have a whole ton of money, you might not get a lot of money. The town might say no way to, that amount of money.
that's true.
A
And you
quarter of
know
a
what?
million dollars?
When I get all those calls, that's the answers. The town refused to fund the removal.
Well, but that's not really, that's not
Well,
really.
yeah, but that's what you just said.
That's the way it is. I can't pay your road because I don't have the money. I saw that. in
That's
the-
not the,
So,
that's not
Tom,
the
if-
issue, and it's
if-
not right, you know?
Trust me, this is not something I asked for as tree warden here, folks.
So, Tom, you're asking for $27,000.
Yes.
Forget the big ask for the next meeting that we have to talk about here, and you may have to prioritize when that time comes. But for this $27,000, is there a plan to get, in your mind, the worst trees, realizing that you think this is the worst one, and then one right next to it that looked healthier is a problem next week? Is a way for you to, you've got a plan for which ones you're going to go out for the $27,000, get the maximum?
My plan is to address all of the main streets, our heavily trafficked streets first. I've started on Brookfield Road. The DPW director, as you know, they just repaved the north part of Brookfield Road, and so he's asked me to stay off the road until the paving cures, hardens a little bit before the tree truck can go back on it. So I'm respecting that request. Beyond that, it's Brookfield Road, Holland Road, Arnold Road, Cedar Street, New Boston Road, Fisk Hill, Mashpog Road would be the next series of streets. Those main, basically as we know them, Chapter 90 roads, the main roads in town that serve as, the connectors to, other communities, that most of our school buses use routinely to get to all of the other subdivisions.
Any
That's
issue?
where I would focus my energy on with this 27,000.
Any issues on Route 20 and 131, and whether they're not on that list?
They are not on that list because those are state highways, and as a municipality, we're not responsible for those trees.
And Tom, will National Grid be working simultaneously doing their part of the deal while you're?
They have notified me they plan to start next week in the Podunk Road area.
Okay.
Working on the three-phase that services Walker Pond and the Podunk Road area.
Okay, so their activity will be going on at the same time?
Right. They've, and again, I'll be honest, will we overlap on streets at some point? We will, but they're doing it, it's their money, it's how they, but they notified me that they plan to start in the Podunk Walker Pond area next week.
Do we know when Greg's guys will be flagman certified? Did he
I don't
speculate?
have that information. No, I don't know.
I'm just curious if we waited, so perhaps they were qualified in the winter when there's not going to be a lot of construction, and they may be more available, and the trees were identifiable. Perhaps there could be some money saved there.
And so to your point, the information you don't have is, the number I quoted to you is a revised number. I went before the Board of Selectmen with a number closer to $290,000, but based on their very same discussion, I did meet with Greg and based, on our discussion as to the availability, and that was his thought, is during the winter, if it's, between snowstorms and things are a little quieter, and we can get the crews out, that he's willing to let those guys be the flagmen and use them. So I revised my special town meeting article request down to try to reflect that savings.
Okay.
I have one other question. I really don't know much about public shade trees, but do any of them come under that law where you have to have public hearings to take those down, or
Not when they're dead, no.
not when they're dead?
Not when
It's
they're
just if somebody perhaps wanted them down for another
Yeah,
reason? That's when you have to have the public hearing?
That's when a public hearing is required, when it's basically a live, healthy tree. and-
Okay.
And a particular resident or, whatever, National Grid, somebody says we need to take it down, or even highway, reconstruction.
Oh,
we need
okay.
to- We need to take the tree down because, we want to,
It's in the way or
it's in
something?
the way, or we just don't like it, or whatever. I mean, people can have.
Okay.
Okay? I mean, I had a public tree hearing on a driveway for Route 15 earlier this.
Yeah, I see them
It
from time to
happens,
time
yeah.
on the Board of Selectmen's, so I thought, well, I hope you don't have to have hearings for
Right, no.
200 trees.
No,
but-
these are dead,
So these are
dead
dead.
trees. You don't need to have a hearing under.
Okay.
general
Well,
laws.
sure.
So why don't we see if we can bring this to a conclusion here, and how about I make a motion that we approve the reserve fund transfer requested by the tree warden in an amount of $27,360.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'm not comfortable with the amount of money. Not that I don't want the work to be done, but there's this bigger article, so I'm not going to vote in favor of that amount. I don't think that, I'm just not going to.
Well, I'll kind of echo what she said. I feel like this debate is going to be a bigger decision at the town meeting, and if we're going to just get started, just to stop it in case the town rejects it,
It's a lot of
I
money.
think it's better to wait.
I just base, I'm voting for this because, I mean, I just walked down Fisk Hill and I can look at these limbs and I'd say, this is coming down. It's just a matter of when. It's not an if. And it's big. And some of the trees are really big ones are really big. And if they come down and they take out the power, I mean, I lost power for 2 hours today and I have no idea why.
Who's liable if somebody gets killed?
That's a good question. Especially if we've
Town's
already
liable.
identified it.
If it's been identified, the town is liable. There's tremendous liability here.
So Tom, I don't know if you're gonna get this money tonight, I don't know if how much you're gonna get a month from now, so you're gonna have, I think you're gonna have to prioritize, and while I realize it's efficient to start on one end of the street, and just work your way up, you may have to do the best, pick the most critical areas for this amount of money, and then we'll see what you're able to get at town meeting going forward. But you're the tree warden, you're gonna have to use the
Well,
money
know,
as best you know.
It's really difficult to identify the trees, and I'm not saying it's not difficult, Tom. Don't get me wrong, okay? You know I'm a tree lover. I'm a big tree lover. I just lost a 90-foot, 200-year-old maple in my yard. Now, thankfully, it was in my yard, and it went across my yard, and it didn't go on it absolutely would have hit my entire house if it was just 12 feet another direction. And that was a real you-know-what to remove. But that tree was absolutely healthy in every other way, other than the fact that it was this big around. And
Then it shouldn't have failed. There had to be something
I'm going to
structurally
tell you, no, I'm
wrong
going to
with the
tell you
tree,
what
Tony.
happened to it. We had 2 weeks of drought, and we had a deluge of rain. 2 days later, that's when it fell. So clearly, it was in an area where it must have rotted the roots, or actually, it didn't even. That's not where it broke in half. So it must have had something to do with the rain. That's what the person who I hired someone to have it removed, clearly, and that's what his recommendation or his thought process was. But I've got a couple of old trees in my yard. And by the way, most of the trees that were hit with gypsy moth in my yard, all but one recovered this year. I only had one that didn't come back. But he looked at that tree, and it happens to be an oak, and he said, give it another year and it might come back again. So I guess I'm just saying it's so gray, you know, and who's to say that all these trees are going to fall at once? And who's to say that they're not going to wait until you have I don't know. It's just a lot of money. You have a big proposal coming before a town meeting.
Could I
I'm
actually,
just not going to,
if you could find and think about, in a way, I mean, this is something I would, to phase it. So if you don't get all the money, you can at least phase it over several years and have that explained to people. So if you don't get 270,000, maybe you get 55,000 to do one phase or one road.
I'll give it some reconsideration, okay? But I did not come before you people or go before the Board of Selectmen without giving this proposal my best thought process and experience. These trees, whether they're on a main street, in front of any one of your houses, or just in a side street, in a stretch of woods where there's nobody's house, will fall, and fail. And if you're going by in your vehicle, or there's a utility wire there that it takes down, it will be affecting you one way or the other. So to try to say, how do you prioritize? In my opinion, the priority is the main roads first and the side roads second. That's the priority. That's what I've come before you and say, and that's, and if, you people want to say we can't afford this amount of money, and you're within your purview to do that, that's why you're the finance committee. At the end of the day, my priority is going to be the main streets first and the side streets secondary.
Do you have,
And how do you differentiate in the Walker Pond subdivision, one street over any of the other 3 or 4 streets? They're all residential streets. They all link together, off
I have the
Cricket
answer to
Drive.
that.
How do you do that? You can't do that.
yeah.
There's
Well,
no way I can
the town
prioritize.
already does that for you. If you just talk to Greg, the town's road plans, we grade the roads 1 through 5. We have, grade 1 roads to grade 5 roads. So the grade 1 roads are the ones the towns deem most important. So you could use that same scale, I guess, in the attack. But we have a grading system for roads. That's how we do the maintenance. The roads that are highest priority, that, like you said, the ones that are connectors to the town, the highest traffic, are the grade 1 roads. And then they work their way down to like Beaudry Lane, which is grade 5. It's not even, not even paved.
And I don't disagree with you, that's exactly what I said.
Yeah,
is,
but I'm just saying the town does
but
it.
I will tell you right now, not even knowing the numbers, but I'll go on and I'll say every one of the roads in Walker Pond, with probably the exception of Falls Road, okay, or maybe Library Lane, are all graded the same. And at the end of the day, how do I decide whether it's Old Village Road or Wells Park Road that gets the limited amount of money first?
I guess that's your expertise at that point. But I'm just trying to say, there's a classification system the town already
Yeah.
has.
Right. But at the end of the day, all of the trees have to get done, and if you say you want to phase it and not do the priority 5 streets till 2 years from now, those trees will already be on the ground. And they will have
I
already
understand what you're saying.
affected residents' lives, one way or the other.
So, yeah, I'd like to go back to that point. The real point of the reason you're here today is to get that work going now.
To be as timely, as and efficient as we can be while we still have leaves on the trees, yes.
Thank you.
This is essentially a public safety issue, that's what it boils down to.
And I'm not going to be not going to be the person that says your street is less important than anyone else's street when it comes to public safety. That's an
That's
argument.
what they do with the roads,
that-
though, like Kevin was saying. I mean,
But-
someone's
but
got to
again,
make the decision,
when you
Tom.
maintain a road to a certain level, the road is always usable. It's not a public safety issue directly, although some may argue, all the roads should be blacktop so you got less potholes. But, we're talking about something that could physically harm you or your property or people, or it, at a minimum, inconvenience you with a power outage for a period of time because you don't want to address in a timely manner the removal of that known hazard. This is dead. This is like saying, if I could, like Greg saying, I'm never going to fill potholes on level 5 streets. And, that's not the reality. Reality is sooner or later he's going to
So
fill the
you don't want to
potholes.
prune dead trees just to keep maybe just prune them and see if that takes a little weight off of them. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but you got to do something. It's a lot.
And in
But, I
order for
mean,
him to
at
do
this-
something, he needs some money to get
At this
going for the
point,
next
we
4 to
only
5
have the
weeks.
27,000 before us. I think the bigger picture will come at town meeting, and I think we should discuss it then. But we do have a motion now, and seconded.
I'd like to
I
move
think
the
we,
motion.
I think we have enough information to vote, so all in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? So I think we have 6-2.
It's too-
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Tom. I guess we will see you again
Do
next
you want
month.
this?
Oh, no, this is,
I know it's Tom's, I didn't know if you wanted it or not.
Okay, that concludes our reserve
Thank
fund
you, Tom.
transfer. Thanks, Tom.
Bye, Tom.
We do have a member of the public here, so we could take public access, sir, if you wanted to say something. Yeah, up here, because, not that we can't hear you, but the TV can't pick you up without being on the microphone. And if you could identify yourself and your address. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you?
Mark Vincent
Oh.
from Batesville.
Okay,
Are you talking public safety issues here?
yes.
I believe a tree within 20 feet of the road is the responsibility of National Grid to take down. Okay? You have to go through conservation, and I believe they make the call. After 20 feet, it's the property owners. Like there's one tree on Bates Hill that needs to come down because it's tangled up in vines, is dead. I'm clearing out our old apple orchard, taking down the old trees, replace them with dwarf trees.
Ah.
Okay.
Good.
I'm also trimming back some of the small stuff to make it easier to get in there and take down the dead trees that are there. I've been noticing I believe I planted Swiss chard this year, and there's a caterpillar that's attacking the heck out of it. I'm not sure if it's gypsy moth or what it is, but I just been giving it to the chickens up there. There is the caterpillar. I'm not sure what type it is, but it's attacking the trees. I'm also looking out back in the woods. There is a 8 by 10 square. I don't know if it is original settlement or if it's a Native American burial ground. But it's up in the woods, out back of Howie Boyd's house. I'm doing a little bit of archaeology work at the house. And I'm discovering all types of things. Old artifacts. Like I got this old chisel. It was all rusted up. I had to grind it and sand it. And I came across some numbers and manufacture, and I found a old slate hammer that was buried in the wall. Mark Johnson, my neighbor across the street, his barn is slate roof. When the water department flushes a hydrant, it did a lot of damage to his property. It rotted out the beams. I'm in the process trying to get a hold of a beam to replace the beam in the front of his barn.
Now, sir, I mean,
I know I'm getting all over the place.
I
but-
know, and we aren't really the committee to go to. If you have concerns about the trees, it should go to the tree warden, and if
No,
there's,
I've approached them. It's just like we had a sinkhole on the hill because when they originally dug the sewer line, they went down 15 feet, and they had to drill and blast all the way up the hill. Now, we know where Chesley made all their money. They didn't have to go down 15 feet for a sewer line when most of the, where it's gravity fed down the hill. And most of the houses only have 6 to 8 foot cellar hose.
Okay.
well, again,
I'm into water quality too, if we really want to get technical.
Yep.
But I lived on School Street in Webster. It don't have to be a storm that comes through, because bright sunny day, it was about 98 degrees, and what happened, there was a
right, they had the
30,
tornado there,
40-foot
right.
tree,
Yeah.
Right,
and it fell down on a sunny day because the rotten wood expanded and took out power to the whole town.
Right.
That happened about,
yeah, it happened this summer, yes. But, sir, I guess the only thing is that if, really, we only look for comments on what it's in front of the finance committee, and if not, then,
Well, we
Well, you
appreciate,
might-
appreciate the comments, because they help
Appreciate you
drive that
coming.
there's a need to have proper funding to address trees, and given the limited funding, as Tommy said, he has to find a way to prioritize these, although he finds it difficult. So that certainly helps add to that discussion, and appreciate the comments.
All right, thank you.
and I hope you do go to the town meeting, which is
Oh.
October 29th.
I will.
Yes.
And one more thing is there are water moccasins in the Quinnipiac River. And whoever built that new nursery, all that marsh out back there, I guarantee you there is water moccasins back there.
All right, thank you very much for coming in, sir.
Thank you.
That was unusual.
Well, we had a public person come.
I was gonna say,
That
I
we-
mean, that's what I meant
which
by
is very
unusual. We
seldom,
never have
which is
anybody.
nice. Unfortunately, I didn't even print the agenda, but I know we have minutes from August 23rd. Not too many people were here, so,
Couldn't abstain.
yes, you'll have to abstain. Has everyone read them who were here?
I thought they were fantastic, and I move the motion to accept them.
And I'll second that. They were
Any-
superb, absolutely superb.
Seriously.
Good job, okay. Any other comments?
Who cannot,
Corrections?
but
It's me, Joni, Jim, Larry, and Bruce were here.
okay.
So everybody else can abstain.
Are they good for you?
Everyone on that side.
From me
has
here,
to
we're going to abstain, all right?
On the other side of the tracks, you don't vote.
Oh, no, Bruce is on my side of the.
No, that's what I mean.
I'm Bruce on. So, we have a motion, a second, all in favor of accepting the minutes of August 23rd? Opposed, abstaining. So we have 5-3,
503.
503, yes, thank you.
get that
Thank you for
Sorry, I
that correction.
can't
You're
get
right.
past those bad habits.
Yes, thank you.
Stop with these. I
Let's see, any old business?
He keeps giving them back to me.
New business. The new business, I suppose, is that we will be meeting soon, because there is going to be a town meeting on October 29th. I believe the warrant articles are due tomorrow.
So when do we anticipate? Because like I said, I'll be in California for the first week of
So
October.
so the note was, articles are due tomorrow, they get presented to selectmen October 1st, and then
Yeah, that's
the
somewhere in here. I believe
the warrant is
public
posted and
hearing-
printed by the 15th,
One of the
so.
reasons for this town meeting is to pass or not pass, vote on articles by the planning board
Oh.
due to the moratorium on
That's right.
marijuana. I believe but I'm not positive, I believe the planning board public hearing is October 9th,
I believe you're right,
I
yes.
believe. You might want to check that, so if anyone wants to go to that, that is.
So what does that mean then? Do we have to wait until that, or?
No, not necessarily, we might have other articles, but,
But we should wait, because if something changes because of
right.
it.
Yeah.
Oh, as far as that article,
Yeah.
certainly, definitely that article we would not.
So the question is, you're thinking to do it one night, then pick a night after the 9th? Do you think you're going to need a couple of nights to have a
I think we might.
discussion, with
It
that being
depends
a
on how many
carryover?
things are
then-
going to be on
then
the,
Plan something after the first when it goes to the selectmen, and then after the 9th. So,
So if it has to be,
I'd rather do it in one night than two, but sometimes
It
we
just depends on
get
what's
deep
on
in the
the,
woods and then details and takes 2 nights.
Right.
I don't know how many articles are coming either, so.
No, that's just it.
so
had that
if
scheduled.
it,
Oh, here it is.
if it closes, it has to be printed up by the 15th?
Oh, we don't print that.
No,
They-
I
they
know,
print
no,
that.
but.
It has to be
I'm
posted,
trying
though,
to
by the
get a
15th.
timeline.
Yes, it has to be posted by the 15th.
So we have to meet prior to the 15th? Yeah?
Well, we could meet for other articles besides the zoning bylaws.
You just need the warrant.
Well, yeah.
Or you don't even need the official warrant. If they had a working one, you could deal with the working one.
Right, right. I mean, the presentation to the selectmen isn't till the 1st, so.
Oh, my goodness.
And what is people's availability in the next
So
few
why don't you
weeks?
do this? It's being presented to selectmen on Monday the 1st. If you pick Thursday the 4th and then Thursday the 11th, that gets you before and after the planning board. If it's a short warrant and we only need the one night, we can use the 11th, right?
That's true.
Do you know how many articles are
No.
being discussed?
No. Well, I know there's two. There's the tree warden and there's the zoning bylaw.
Yep.
Or bylaws, I don't know what form they're in.
I've got a really busy October.
One from Barbara, right, on the IT.
No, I don't think so.
When does it close?
For what?
Thought she said she was gonna do.
So
Oh, no,
it
she said she
said,
might do a warrant article to replenish our reserve fund.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
so the note said the deadline to get them to the town administrator is tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
The warrant will be presented to the selectmen on the 1st. And 2
And it
weeks
says they
later,
will
on the
close it,
15th,
too.
it will be posted. And then 2 weeks after that, you will have the special town meeting.
It looks like they plan to close it on the 1st, so we would certainly, not that they can't reopen it, because they can and they have, but I would think that we would have the bulk of the articles by the 1st. So what is people's availability those first 2 weeks of October?
These are always better for me, but that's,
Well, the 9th is a Tuesday.
That is a Tuesday.
11th's a Thursday.
Yeah.
I'm available the 2nd, the 4th, the 9th, and the 11th. Those are the Tuesdays and Thursdays, the first 2 weeks. I'm open all 4 of those days.
Joni, when are you away?
I'm away the 7th to the 15th,
Ah,
and I'm also away the weekend, the last weekend in October, coming home the 29th.
ah.
So you might not have to listen to me on the tree ward.
So what we're talking about is the Tuesday and Thursdays of
I
the
won't
first
be
2
there.
weeks.
Right.
Kevin has a
basically.
preference for Tuesdays, but that second Tuesday is the public hearing on the bylaw, so it'd be hard for us to meet while that's going on and,
Well, I think at least some of us should probably go to
right.
listen.
Yep.
Right.
So is Thursdays difficult or
That might have no
manageable?
effect on any of the others.
Wednesdays?
That
Or Tuesdays best?
they're discussing isn't going to affect the tree wardens.
Oh, no, that's why I think that we should probably meet that first week. Unless there's only,
Right.
if there's only 3 articles altogether, I would say just, I
We'd
mean, I
wait
think
until
we
we
need
got 'em
to,
all.
yes.
Yes.
But if there's,
well, you'll need to arrange too, for whatever meeting, you'll have to have
Right.
the town planner and probably the chair of the planning board here.
right. Oh, yeah, definitely. So why don't we, do you want to tentatively say the 4th? And the 11th?
The 9th is
I can make
The
that-
9th is
I
the
can make
planning
those
board.
work.
You can always set the record for the latest meeting ever, so.
No, we don't need to do that,
No,
this
we don't
early
need
in the
to do that.
season.
Because you said the planning board is the 9th,
Yes.
so we could do the 4th and the 11th.
Do the 4th and 11th. If it's a short warrant with a couple of articles, some of which you already know coming, then we can just
And cancel
cancel
the
the
4th
4th and
Ah,
only
yeah, you can
only show
cancel
up on the
the 4th.
11th.
I mean, I won't even post it
Right,
until.
I'd rather do this in one night, but not knowing
Yeah.
how long the warrant's gonna be and how deep we're gonna get into discussion. We'll
If
go-
Joni's not here, it'll go a lot quicker.
You want, do you,
No personal insults, please.
That was a joke.
I'm picking dates with no names and faces in mind here.
people appreciate me asking questions, you know.
I know.
All right, that's the
I haven't even
plan.
gotten the full swings of things yet.
We finished you dozing over there.
Yeah, you're not really living up to your expectations.
Are you, so are you saying the 4th and the
11th, yeah.
12th?
11th.
Did you say? 11th? All right.
Consecutive Thursday.
Did you want me to reach out to Jean about the 11th, so she can put that on her calendar? Or
Are you
were
the
gonna
current
do that?
liaison? I haven't really done them yet.
If you haven't redone them, then I am the
Yeah,
liaison.
why don't you then? Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
As long as we're scheduling meetings, and hopefully we don't have any more reserve transfers, but since these seem to be coming up and we're trying to get together in a hurry, does it make sense to have like a standing meeting one night each month? And then you can cancel it if nothing comes up, but at least we're not running around trying to put something
Scramble.
together and find
This is
5
pretty
people at the last
unprecedented.
minute for a meeting.
I don't think last year we had any. Until,
I believe you're right. I don't
Until
have
the
any notes
special.
that we
December.
released any.
yeah. Well, I mean, November and December, you get into the holidays. I can't imagine they'd be doing too much then. I don't know.
I don't know what the holidays have about, all of a sudden something broke and we
We're
need to
busy.
fix it and there we gotta
We're
go,
all
right?
busy.
Whatever, I just throw it out there. If you want to just assemble them as needed, we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't, well, the summer was a little tight, but for the most part, I think I get a quorum.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, any other new business? We've had our public access, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Adjourned at 8:39. Thank you all for coming out. Some of those dates are great for me.